had actually sent a delegation to Venezuela on Friday, the day before Maduro was kidnapped or apprehended, or whatever you like to say. So I don't think that was the case. But the fact that people even speculate on it, I think, is interesting.
Yeah, but I mean, I can't see what more the European leaders can do than what they've already done, because we can't get into a military fight with the US. That's just pie in the sky, because we'd be crushed within weeks. You know, their military is far more powerful, far bigger than our military. But I understand what you're saying about it. No, he doesn't think like a normal politician. I mean, like, you see his comments on Somalia and how he talks about some countries. You know, no US president in the past would have ever talked about a country like that.
No.
Like Trump does. So he doesn't think like that. But he's not exactly a genius, is he? So all this is quite planned and quite... I'm trying to think of the words. It's quite planned with precision, and there's, like you talk about influencing this and influencing that. For me, I just think he's a mouthpiece. But I would like to know
for whom
behind him.
Yeah, well, for whom?
This is the thing we don't know. I mean, there was that Project 2025, wasn't there, which he denied was anything to do. You know, he denied any knowledge of it. But all that is coming to fruition. And then you had that recent thing that Simon Marks spoke about, this new security strategy. That's not come from Trump, Ian. So where has it? I mean, I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you.
Well, I can't answer that question. I mean, you say he's not a genius. Well, I don't think he's a genius either. But on the other hand, you have to say that he does have a few achievements to his name since he's become president for the second time. We all joke about these 8 wars that he's claims that he's solved. Well, he has actually played a part in several of them. I mean, Azerbaijan, Armenia, for example. I mean, he was there with the two leaders when they signed a peace agreement. So we can't automatically assume that something that Donald Trump says he's not going to do or he hasn't done. Thank you very much, Darren. 0345 6060973. What else would you like European leaders to say or do in response to Donald Trump's threatened action against Greenland? Ashley says Starmer has been much more robust than the Tories and Farage. If either were in power, they would be sending British troops into Greenland on behalf of Trump by now. What a ridiculous thing to say. We'll be talking to the Lib Dem MP Mike Martin in a moment. He's the MP for Tunbridge Wells, where, of course, you may remember there was a severe water outage for about 10 days just before Christmas. The head of South East Water has been appearing before the Select Committee in Parliament today and was given quite a rough time. And, of course, Mike also is on the Defence Select Committee, so we might ask him a couple of questions on Greenland as well. It's 7:31. Let's get the news headlines from Amelia Cox.
British armed forces will be deployed on the ground in Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire with Russia. Sir Keir Starmer has been speaking in Paris alongside the French president following a summit involving 30 countries. Greenland's Prime Minister has told Donald Trump he can't have control of the island just because he wants to. The US President claims he needs to annex the Danish-controlled territory right now. And large parts of England and Wales are expected to be hit with heavy snow this week, brought by the high winds from Storm Goretti. A major incident has already been declared in Aberdeenshire, with concerns rural communities could become cut off. LBC weather. Snow will linger in northern Scotland tonight, rain moving west across Wales and England, with showers for Northern Ireland, lows of -3 degrees.
This is LBC.
At
Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
7:33 on LBC. Let me tell you who's on Cross Question from 8. We have Alex Burghart, the Conservative Shadow Cabinet Office Minister and Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary. Luke Charters, Labour MP for York Outer. Laura Brown, Commissioning Editor of The Spectator. And Christina Patterson, journalist and broadcaster. Now, we'll come back to your calls on Greenland in just a moment. But first, I want to talk about a select committee hearing, which I was watching this morning. You'll understand why in a moment, because it featured the Chief Executive of South East Water. Now, those of you who remember the events in Tunbridge Wells before Christmas, where most of Tunbridge Wells was without water for up to 10 days, I suspect many of them would have been tuning into it too, because let me put it this way. He was given a bit of a roasting by Alistair Carmichael's Select Committee. And we have with us in the studio Mike Martin, the Liberal Democrat MP for Tunbridge Wells. And as I said before, he's a member of the Defence Select Committee, also former British Army officer. So we'll turn to Greenland after we've talked about what happened this morning. Were you in the audience for this hearing?
Yes.
With your eyes sort of pointing into his...
I mean, there were several moments where there were audible gasps in the room. People's jaws dropped to the ground. Alistair Carmichael said... He's the chair of the committee. I've been an MP for 25 years. I've never seen a committee hearing like this.
And you had presumably briefed Mr. Carmichael on what had happened, because...
I submitted evidence to the committee, and I made sure that the committee, as I have done with the Drinking Water Inspectorate and Ofwat, all of these organisations are conducting investigations. I want to make sure that they have all the evidence and the facts that they need to hold South East Water to account.
When it happened... I mean, you were at the forefront of you were communicating with the people. I mean, that is your job to communicate with your electorate, but it was actually the job of South East Water to communicate to the electorate, and they failed on that. Yeah. They didn't tell the truth, did they, about what was happening?
So today, I mean, this was really stark. We had the CEO came up first and made a number of points, and specifically he said that this was an unavoidable incident. We don't know how it happened. It sort of came out of the blue, effectively what he said. And then Marcus Rink, the chief water inspector for England and Wales, who is, not a guy you want to meet in a dark alleyway at night. He's ice cold. And he effectively said, that's complete rubbish. And he had scientists at the Pembury treatment work throughout and said, this is what happened. And he described what had happened. And he said that South East Water knew about these problems from November. The outage started in December, at the very end of November. And not only that, he said that the Drinking Water Inspectorate, the organisation that he heads, had given advice to South East Water, which they'd even fortified with an enforcement notice about filters they had to put in, about process changes they had to make. South East Water did none of it, and Marcus Rink, the chief inspector, said had they done that, this outage wouldn't have happened. It was entirely avoidable. So yeah, Dave Hinton lied, or he either lied or he doesn't have a clue what's going on.
Have you any confidence that this won't happen again?
No. And actually today, that's something that came out of the committee hearing. South East Water have no confidence that it won't happen again until they have some planned improvement works to link up Buell Water, which is a body of water to the southeast of Tunbridge Wells, to the network to give more resilience. But that won't be completed until 2028. And in fact... This evening, about 2 hours after the hearing, 6,000 houses in Tunbridge Wells lost water. Over the weekend, we've had 3 outages, burst water mains, power failures. I can't describe to you. I mean, it's impossible to get across how people in Tunbridge Wells feel that they simply don't know whether when they turn their taps on, that water will come out.
So when Rishi Sunak said he was going to divert money into areas like Tunbridge Wells before the last election, maybe he had a bit of a point. I jest. I really do jest on that. I mean, as the local MP, I mean, you were in the British Army, so I mean, you actually had some skills to bring to this in communicating what was going on to the local electorate. You used your social media, I think, very impressively in that regard. But if it happens again, people are going to start to blame you. I mean, it's not your responsibility, but they're going to try. They'll say, "Well, why haven't you sorted this out?" And you are powerless to do that, aren't you?
I mean, I have no levers to pull. I have narrative power. I'm an MP. Look, I think there are a number of things we're trying to do at the moment. We have an outage at the moment. Overnight, there's going to be intermittent supply for the people in South Tunbridge Wells. So actually, we're dealing with that and working with the Borough Council, other partners. So that's kind of, the day job, crisis management. There's also, I think, an accountability issue around Dave Hinton resigning. And I think that when he resigns, because I think it's a matter of when, not if.
Because he's very angry with you, isn't he, for calling for him to resign?
Well, I don't care. We need to get someone external in to South East Water, because you can't have a situation where the Drinking Water Inspectorate is instructing the firm to make changes that they don't make, and then the supply falls over for 25,000 houses. It's just completely unacceptable. And then there is business compensation. So I think there are a number of strands of what we need to fix here, and that's what I'm going to be doing.
And is Mr. Hinton going to have to go back in front of the committee? Because if he has, as you allege, lied, then, that's a pretty serious thing.
So the committee, I think the committee chair, Alistair Carmichael, is going to be discussing that with the committee about whether they bring him back, because they had Dave Hinton, the CEO, first, and then they had the chief inspector for drinking water, who basically contradicted almost everything that Dave Hinton said. And so I think they're now going to bring back Dave Hinton, or they're certainly going to discuss bringing back Dave Hinton again to get him to, I suppose, clarify is the polite way of saying it. But, there's two options. He either misled the committee, or he actually doesn't know what's going on. And my dealings with the company during the crisis, and I dealt with everyone from people hanging out bottled water at the stations to the crisis management team to Dave Hinton, all levels of South East Water. And my sense was that the organisation was not being led. There was not one period. There was not one sense of what the truth was about the situation. And Dave Hinton was one of the worst informed people. He'd pop up in ministerial meetings and give briefings. And I and other local officials would then correct him in the middle of his briefing, saying that's not right. We've got other information from other bits of South East Water that's probably more up to date. It's just pathetic.
Ivan says on a WhatsApp message here, you didn't like Tunbridge Wells anyway, did you? Is that addressed to you?
That's to you. I love Tunbridge Wells. I love Tunbridge Wells.
Let's move on to Greenland, because, as I say, you've had a military career. You've probably got you're on the Defence Select Committee. You've probably got some very strong views about what's going on at the moment in all sorts of trouble spots. But let's stick to Greenland for the moment. Do you think the statement that's been issued this afternoon is robust enough?
Look, it's a start. I think it took quite a while, didn't it, for them to get this level of unity. I think straight out of the blocks, we had the Sweden and Finland, and it took a while for the Germany and France and Italy and all the rest of it.
Starmer's been relatively robust on this, unlike Venezuela.
He has. And I think, do they have any choice? I think I would like to see, if you really want to put the price up for America around this stuff around Greenland, and this is not about taking on America militarily, of course not. I would announce a Danish-led training exercise with other European NATO countries contributing 250 soldiers each to because actually Donald Trump's made a great point. There's lots of Russian and Chinese influence. We need to counter that. European states are stepping up. Actually, America can send 250 troops if they like, and we'll do that training exercise on Greenland. And what that does is there's a difference of opinion in America between the White House and between Congress. The Defense Authorization Act that Congress passed before Christmas actually clipped the wings a little bit of the White House around some of the things that they're saying, particularly around Europe and US force levels in Europe, making sure that they're high enough. And I think that what that does is it signals to Congress, where there are grown-ups in Congress, when we as the committee go to Washington, we speak to the armed forces, the Senate Armed Forces Committee, very, very sensible people. I think they will then start to realise that actually this posturing around Greenland from the White House actually doesn't stand, and it's not in the US strategic interest. And so I would like to see activities like that, couched in a way, as I think Keir Starmer's very good at, of kind of saying, actually, Donald Trump's got a great point, here's what we're going to do about it. But the thing that we're going to do about it is going to drive a wedge between the White House and Congress and actually just settle that issue. And so I think we need to be a bit creative. It's a bit like judo with Trump, right? He spouts a load of rubbish. We need to not piss him off when we we don't want to call him out for being an idiot. He is, but we want to then kind of offer something up that blocks him off with what he wants to do.
I have to apologise for your language there.
I'm so sorry. Is this a family
If anyone
show?
was offended,
sorry.
it's before 9 o'clock, Mike.
I'm so sorry.
But we'll let you.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Always good to see you. Right, let's go back to your calls. Let's go to James in Gillingham. Hello, James.
Oh, hi, Ian. I'll
Hi.
try and keep my language. Yeah, thanks for having me on. The caller you had before, the gentleman you just spoke to, I sort of agree with a lot of what he said. I mean, I think Starmer and the rest of the rest of the leaders with him have handled it about as well as they can do. You're not dealing with a normal person. You're dealing with a sort of someone almost like a toddler. You have to ingratiate them a little bit here, stand up to them a little bit, but he's not a normal person, Trump. And
he's not a normal leader. That is, okay, he's not a normal person either.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean to say that we just have to either kowtow to him. We can't ignore him. He is the president of the United States. So therefore, we have to have a relationship. And Keir Starmer, so far, I would say, has navigated that reasonably well. And he clearly doesn't want to go down the line of calling him out on Venezuela, even though that's what I'm sure he'd really like to do. Is he right to do that?
No. I think he possibly should have been a little bit more forthright about that. But one thing I wanted to say, I think it's just laughable, Kemi Badenoch sort of laying into Starmer for not being forthright enough with Trump. Or I would have loved to have seen how Kemi Badenoch would have dealt with it. And I think it's beyond politics. I think she's trying to make a political point to sort of put Starmer down. I think it's too important for this now. I think Kemi Badenoch, I know she's the opposition leader, but should be showing kind of support at this time. It's too important, do you know what I mean, to score political points.
Well, I think she has said that he said the right thing on Greenland. I thought she
was saying he hadn't. I thought she was saying that he hadn't been forthright enough and sort of, grow some bees, basically. I thought I thought that's basically what she was saying.
Well, I'm sure I saw a quote. Okay, go on.
Sorry, and sorry to interrupt you. What surprises me is that you have all the generals, the colonels, the admirals, or whatever in the American Navy, the Army. What are these people thinking? What are they doing? They've been in the Army and the forces for decades, and suddenly they're being kind of commander-in-chief is Trump, and they must themselves be very uneasy about what's going on. Surely they can't be under Trump's wing themselves. Do you see what I mean? If they've been themselves, they brought up in the forces for decades, they haven't just been put there by Trump. So they can't. Do you see what I'm saying?
No, I do see what you're saying, and I think they probably feel, well, we've got another 3 years to go with this, and then hopefully that nightmare will be over. That's probably the overwhelm. But then again, there'll be many people in the armed forces who think, no, Trump is actually he's the best thing for the armed forces. He's spending billions, if not trillions of pounds on the Army, Navy, the Air Force. We haven't had money like this spent on us for years. The problem that I think some of them have with him is that, well, if you're spending all this money, that indicates that you probably intend to use the armed forces rather more than maybe some of your predecessors did. That's
precarious means as well for doing things that are sometimes illegal, if you see what I mean. This is where surely they should be thinking, I'm not happy with this. If you've got a general whose army is going to be, I know it won't happen, or hopefully it doesn't happen, invade Greenland, then surely they're thinking this is not on. We shouldn't be doing this.
Well, you would think so, but of course the armed forces are very hierarchical. He is the commander-in-chief. And in the end, if you don't obey your commander-in-chief, you either resign or you're thrown out. Simple as that. So those that do have the kind of concerns that you're talking about are in a very difficult position. James, thank you very much indeed. Keep your calls coming. 0345 6060 973. Would you like European leaders to have been even more robust on Greenland? I mean, they've been relatively trenchant. But isn't it interesting now? We've got various world conflicts. And I mean, Gaza has just disappeared off the news agenda completely. Ukraine, sort of. Interesting things going on in Iran at the moment, which we're going to be coming to after 9 o'clock. I wonder whether we, not just in the media, but as commentators as well, whether we have the capacity to deal with more than one or possibly two world crises at a time, because we should be covering all of these things in the way that they ought to be covered. But I just have this instinct that whether you're a TV station, a website or whatever, it's quite difficult to keep up at the moment, isn't it? It's 7:49.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Many of you were and are still outraged by President Trump's action, or the action that he authorised, with those executive orders on the weekend and the taking of Nicolas Maduro. So where would you be if his ambitions to extend to Greenland? Let's turn straight now to former Defence Secretary, Conservative politician Sir Ben Wallace, who joins me now.
I think overall we're in a very dangerous territory. What I'm really worried about is this whole sense of we're now going to run another sovereign state. You know, that's what Putin does. That's Putin's justification for invading Ukraine.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app.
The following
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
7:51 on LBC. Let's go to more of your calls. Mike is a new caller in Nottingham. Hello, Mike.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Just really about Greenland. It's nice that they are saying something against Trump, but that's all we're doing is saying something. I think the minister said, the MP said, let's go have some manoeuvres in Denmark. I think we should put European troops straight into to Greenland and put up a defensive barrier. I don't think that American people would ever countenance an attack on European soldiers. I just don't think they would.
Well, the Americans already have a base on Greenland. The interesting thing is that they've reduced the number of people on that base to just, I think, a few hundred. I think there were several thousand there at one point. So you think, well, why is that? Why would they reduce the numbers there if they regard Greenland as such a strategic, important asset?
Yeah, Yeah, I agree. The thing is, we didn't take Putin seriously, and I think this would put a really strong message to Putin if we had massive troops to protect Greenland, even with the American base there. It doesn't matter,
Yeah, but the problem is, I mean, say we sent, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000 troops from different countries, all together, a couple of thousand. I mean, they could be overrun by the American military in a matter of hours, couldn't they? So, I mean, it would just be gesture politics, wouldn't it?
How would they be?
Well, very easily.
Well, how many? I don't know how many American troops are there, but
there's about 200, I think. But
I'm talking about thousands.
Yeah, I know. But they would easily be able to send tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, to complete the job. Obviously, there's only 56,000 Greenlanders there. So, I mean, it wouldn't be difficult to send a flood of people to defeat a European force.
Yeah, but I don't think the American people would want to do that. And that's my point. If we're going to get Congress behind this to solve the problem, I think we need to do something positive. Words don't count anymore.
Well, if words didn't count, Donald Trump would be out of a job, wouldn't he? Because whenever he does a press conference, I mean, I think he spends half of his time ringing up the American media. I wonder when he actually has time to do his job properly. Words count a lot with Donald Trump.
Well, exactly. He's going to do it. He's going to do something on Greenland, and words aren't going to defend Greenland.
Okay, Mike, thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Ulf in Hamburg. Ulf, hi. Is this a big matter for debate in Germany?
Not really. I mean, to my surprise, the German government have reacted rather clearly, more clearly than I would have thought. But I don't think there is anybody supporting Trump. Trump is just not popular in Germany. So there's not much debate going on. But frankly, it's not important what we Europeans say. We all know we must keep Trump on board. That means shouting at him would be counterproductive. As long as we need the Americans, we can only go on kissing up to them strategically to keep them on board. What we need, of course, is the ability to defend ourselves against the Russians and then maybe even against the Americans. We'll have to team up and tool up, but they will take some time. Until then, we better tread carefully. So that movie scene with Hugh Grant, it's a movie. It's not good. It's not a good idea in reality.
Is that you're talking about Love Actually? Is that actually called Liebe eigentlich in Germany?
No idea. Really, I never saw that movie. I never even noticed.
Oh no, it's really good. It's really good.
Okay, yeah, but don't base your foreign politics on it. And
why don't you tell that to Ed Davey, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, because that's what he seems to be all about.
Next time he's on cross-question, I can do so. Just put me through. So, frankly, all these people who say we must stand up to the bully are behaving like naive parents who tell their small, fragile child to stand up to a bully who is 3 years older, with 20 kilo more than their child and has a brown belt in karate. That's nonsense. You cannot stand up to such a bully. You just get beaten up. You must avoid him or you must manipulate him. We cannot avoid Trump, so we must manipulate him. That's all we can do at the moment. And increase our own armament as fast and as much as possible. We are doing so. But it will take some time. Too bad.
Well, let me give you the actual title of Love Actually in German. It is Tatsächlich Liebe.
Oh dear.
I'm sure you can find it on the Bundes Netflix or something like that.
You wouldn't get me into a movie with such a title unless you threaten me with a gun. But
okay.
Yeah.
Always good to talk, Ulf. Thank you very much. Let's go to Andrew, who's in Trowbridge. Hello, Andrew.
Hello. Good evening.
Evening.
You're having fun this evening, aren't you?
Oh, I am. In more ways than you can possibly imagine.
Okay, so I thought I'd start off with a bit of a jokey one. How about we rebrand Greenland Trumpland and send him a nice medal which says, "Thank you for liberating us. We're looking forward to voting for the other guy in the next election."
Okay. Not quite sure that's very realistic.
No, I did say it was a bit of a jokey one.
Mind you, if he can get a peace prize from FIFA, frankly, Andrew, anything is possible.
Yes, that's why it was inspiring my answer. Just as ludicrous, only they actually did it. I only thought it up.
Yeah, and he didn't see. I mean, he was actually really taking it seriously, wasn't he? I'm sure it's on his mantelpiece in Trump Tower somewhere.
Oh yeah. I mean, for a little bit of an insight into how he behaves, you try watching Godfather 2.
Well, I haven't seen Godfather 1. Is that necessary before I watch Godfather 2?
Not really, no.
Right.
Although it would help a little bit. You can just go straight in at number 2 and wouldn't bother with number 3.
Yeah, well, I haven't bothered with number 1. It just doesn't appeal to me. But I know everyone says, it's a legendary film, you should watch it. Well, I've got other things to do. Andrew, thank you very much indeed. Coming up...
I do have a cure for this situation, and that is to basically crash the price of oil so nobody can afford to go to war.
Oh, now there's a thought. I'm not an economist, and I'm not going to even pretend to understand what would happen if that happened. Andrew, thank you. Coming up in the next hour, it's Tuesday's edition of Cross Question, our famous panel show. We have Alex Burghart with us, Conservative Shadow Cabinet Office Minister and Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary, and MP for Brentwood and Ongar. Luke Charters is the Labour MP for York Outer. Strangely, I don't think there's a York Inner. Anyway, Lara Brown is commissioning editor of The Spectator, and Christina Patterson is a journalist and broadcaster. They'll all be here taking your calls. The lines are open for your calls, 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp us on that number. And of course, you can now watch the whole show on Global Player, on the LBC app, on the YouTube channel and TikTok.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the UK's made a formal commitment to deploy troops to Ukraine after any peace deal with Russia. Along with France, Britain would defend the sea and skies and train the Ukrainian military. The US would lead monitoring of a ceasefire. Speaking in Paris, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, says Russia's leader hasn't shown he wants fighting to stop.
Over the last few weeks, we've seen the opposite. Further horrific strikes on Ukraine, killing and wounding civilians, and cutting off power for millions of people in the dead of winter.
Sir Keir Starmer and European leaders have been rallying behind Greenland, following renewed threats from Donald Trump to annex it. In a joint statement, they say the semi-autonomous Danish territory belongs to its people. The US president says he could take it over on national security grounds. Sophie Pultz, who's Danish, is a researcher on international policy at the IPPR think tank.
I don't think we would see any European troops being deployed to try to protect Greenland. And let's remind ourselves that Greenland is a country of 57,000 people. It's an area 9 times the size of the UK. There is really not much to be done militarily. So really, let's hope it doesn't come to that.
An RAF spy plane appears to have flown over an oil tanker which reportedly escaped the US naval blockade of Venezuela. Tracking platforms show the vessel south of Iceland. South Yorkshire police have admitted wrongly telling a 17-year-old's family that he died in a car crash last month. Officers mistook Trevor Wynne for another teenager who was in hospital. A breeding programme for penguins at an indoor aquarium will remain on hold. The owners of Sea Life London have had what they call challenging talks with animal welfare groups after 75 MPs joined activists calling for the birds' release. And people in Aberdeenshire are being warned there's a good chance rural communities will be cut off by ongoing heavy snow. A major incident's been declared. Meanwhile, weather warnings affect most of the UK over the coming days, with Storm Goretti threatening snow for parts of Wales and England. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed up 118 points at 10,122. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather. Rain and sleet moving across the south this evening, eventually clearing overnight. More snow in northern Scotland later. Frosty and icy, lows of -3. Tomorrow, dry for many with sunny spells. Scattered wintry showers continuing in Scotland and western areas. Highs of 2 to 9 Celsius. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 8:03. You are watching Cross Question or listening to Cross Question, whichever takes your fancy, because you can now watch us on YouTube, on Global Player, the LBC app, and indeed TikTok. Now, with us on the panel tonight, to my left, Lara Brown, commissioning editor of The Spectator. To her left, Luke Charters, Labour MP for York Outer. To my right, Christina Patterson, journalist and broadcaster, and Alex Burghart, Conservative Shadow Cabinet Office Minister and Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary and MP for Brentwood and Ongar, therefore winning the award for longest job title on the programme. The lines are open, 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp us on that number or text 84850.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross Question. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app. This is LBC.
Well, let's start with a text question from Scott in West Hampstead. President Trump says that Greenland should be US territory for strategic defence purposes in the Arctic region, but his real intent may be to exploit Greenland's oil, mineral and rare earth resources. How should Denmark, the Greenlanders themselves and European leaders handle Trump's threats to annex Greenland to protect Greenland's territorial integrity and NATO's strategic defence interests? Luke, let's come to you first on that.
Well, Greenland's a sovereign territory, NATO ally. PM's come together with our allies to support and back them today. Have a look at that statement. I think it's quite robust. I think it's quite common sense that we stand by Greenland. I would say, though, the Arctic is an important geopolitical theatre now, where you're thinking about climate change and the future of defence. So whether it's NATO coming together and the US, they've got bases already in Greenland, don't forget. It is going to be an important part of our global security theatre, I think, in the decades to come.
It is interesting that the number of personnel on the American base on Greenland has gone down from several thousand to 200. And you think, well, why is that? It all seems a bit incongruous, doesn't it?
I think I was down in the Falklands last year, and these theatres, given the climate change, it's changing. And we've got to continually look at the type of assets that we've got. And if you look at, say, the Royal Navy and some of the capabilities we've got going into the North Sea, we've got to come together and stitch a lot of that together as a NATO alliance. And that's how we're going to deter Russia from the Arctic region as well.
You talk about territorial integrity, which you rightly say the Prime Minister's being quite robust on, but he wasn't robust on Venezuela's territorial integrity, was he?
Well, look, I mean, Maduro, I think, is a complete monster. The more I learn about his atrocities, 9 million Venezuelans displaced, torture, links to international drug trafficking, and I learned something really sober and sinister, something called the Maduro diet. Have you heard about that? It's where, on average, Venezuelans have lost 10 kilograms because of some of the food insecurity in that country. No one's going to be losing any sleep over seeing Maduro come to justice. When it comes to the US's actions, they've got every right as a country to go and tackle international narcotics. The Brits do it. We've got the Royal Navy, HMS Trent in the Caribbean. We're doing counter-narcotics operations all the time. We're doing it our way as Brits. The Americans seem to be doing it their way, and it is up to them to justify their own actions in line with international law.
OK, Lara Brown.
On Greenland, I think Trump is an opportunist. And I think what he does is he spends several months sussing out whether or not he would be allowed to get away with something. It is completely true that Greenland will be very important strategically if we ever go to war with Russia or China. It's why I'm surprised that America don't make more use of the base. But that means that when we see comments like Stephen Miller's today calling for Greenland or Trump's earlier this year, what needs to happen is a very, very forceful response from NATO saying, hang on, Greenland is a sovereign nation of Denmark. We will defend Greenland. You will not be allowed to do this like you've been allowed to take action.
But NATO can't do that because America is the primary funder of NATO.
NATO countries that are not America should be putting enough money into defence that they're able to support Greenland. I don't think America can do ground war with...
But it can't be done through NATO, though, can it?
No, but I think that your obligations to NATO stand even if you can't do something through NATO.
And do you think he will actually go through with this?
Well, no, I don't think he will. That was, I think, because he's opportunistic. What he's looking for is to see if he thinks that there would be no pushback. And what Starmer has done quite effectively, alongside the Coalition of the Willing, is made it clear there would be a major international reaction to him in trying to invade Greenland. I think that will protect them for now. But we need to hold firm on that consistently or things could change. It's probably a very appealing thing for Trump.
Christina.
What a mess this all is. What a mess it all is. I thought, Luke, that your response to the Maduro situation was very, very convincing and plausible, but it is pretty clear that America has broken international law here. We will find out. But if Maduro is found not to be convicted of whatever narco crime they have, look, the guy is a monster, clearly. You're absolutely right in everything you say about how Venezuela has been affected under his horrific leadership. But you don't go around kidnapping leaders of sovereign countries. That's just not how international law operates. And we've seen the sphere, the context of this, which is the international strategy document that was issued a couple of weeks ago, in which America has made it clear that it owns that hemisphere. And if it really wants to go after narcotics, then it should go to Colombia, and maybe it will do next. I'm currently watching The Night Manager on TV, and it's quite discombobulating going from all these shipping of drugs loads to Colombia from Europe, and then watching what Trump is doing in Venezuela. I mean, he killed people on boats without any evidence that they were criminals. This is just a rogue state going rogue, and I absolutely see why Keir Starmer has to wrap himself up in knots, not least because of the latest announcement about Ukraine and possible boots on the ground in Ukraine. And this is such a delicate operation. He obviously can't blow up the US support for that deal. So I'm not criticising him for not being more unequivocal on this, but it is kind of walking on eggshells. And in terms of Greenland, of course Trump shouldn't take Greenland. I think Trump is serious about Greenland. I don't think he's seeking permission. That's not Trump's style. He doesn't ask permission. I think what there will be is an unholy mess, because America is part of NATO and Denmark is part of NATO, and it will be a terrible mess. I mean, you say, Lara, that we should, the NATO countries should commit more funding. Well, we're way ahead of the targets that Trump imposed on us. And many countries are nowhere near the targets that they're meant to reach by this point. So that's not going to happen. I think we just have to hope he doesn't. And I'm grateful that at least Starmer and a few others have said at this point that that would be a really bad idea. Ultimately, it does have to be up to the Greenlanders. And if they decide they want to be under US jurisdiction, then so be it. But that would have to be a proper process.
You say it has to be up to Greenlanders. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that. But 99.9% of Venezuelans agree with what Trump did. So why that's a slightly double standard, isn't it?
The thing is, they don't support the regime. They hate the regime. They hate.
No, but they're grateful to Trump. I mean, you see, I'm sure you've sort of seen them on TV, radio, loads of them on Instagram saying, "I may be in America."
Yeah.
So Venezuelans there saying, "I may be a diehard Democrat, but credit to Trump."
Well, let's see what happens. I mean, there are shadows here of Saddam Hussein. Anytime you remove a brutal dictator, then there will, at some point, or look at the Arab Spring, there is rejoicing in the streets, and then it's what happens afterwards that really matters.
Okay, Alex.
So let's talk about Greenland, let's talk about Venezuela. I think, first off, nobody should be in any doubt about just how serious a situation this is. And obviously my party believes that the future of Greenland is up to the Greenlanders, but if the Americans were to move against Greenland, I think it would probably mean the end of NATO. I think the consequence of that would probably be a withdrawal of American support in Ukraine. I think the consequence of that would be Putin's victory in Ukraine, and then a massive Russian war machine looking for something to do, and Europe not being in a fit state to defend itself. That's where we are. There's a complete change in world order. It's very, very serious. Now, the thing I take some comfort from is that some words that were told to me by an American friend after Trump was elected for the second time, which he said, you must always take the president seriously, but you don't always have to take him literally. And I think that there is unquestionably American strategic interest in Greenland, and it's now incumbent upon NATO, particularly Denmark and Greenland, to have a conversation with the Americans about what that looks like, and hope that they are not intent on marching in without any sort of agreement.
Because the interesting thing here is that, and I didn't realise this until, today really, but there's a great independence movement in Greenland. And there are only 56,000 Greenlanders anyway, and they're not particularly happy with being ruled by Denmark. So if Trump wants to get Greenland, he just needs to say, well, declare yourselves independent, then we'll bung you 20 billion or so. Well, you'll all be millionaires.
Yeah, exactly. You could, in America, I don't think that this will happen. But I mean, the conversation that's being had in some parts of the States is about the Louisiana Purchase, where just over 200 years ago, the Americans bought huge swathes of territory off the French and turned it into their country. So there is a tradition of this in America. And if the Americans said to all 56,000 Greenlanders, you can have $1 million each, $56 billion, the US could afford that. I don't think it's going to pan out that way. But there is a strain of Republican who is thinking in those terms.
Yes, there are various strains of Republican at the moment. Not what we all grew up with either. Where do you see this heading now? Because there are now 5 areas of world crisis. You've got Gaza, you've got Ukraine, you've got Iran, you've got Venezuela, and now possibly Greenland. This is unprecedented. I mean, it's normally 2 maximum. And I wonder whether sort of the political classes and indeed the media have got the ability to cover this properly, because Iran, which we're going to be doing an hour on after this, I mean, that's kind of disappeared off the media agenda, hasn't it, Christine?
Yeah.
And it shouldn't have, because the protests are actually getting bigger.
I mean, I've been to Iran. I love Iran. I think the Iranian people are incredibly brave, apart from anything else, and highly educated and very, very impressive. But, they've been living under a horrific regime for a very long time. And any of these people have been protesting, and there have been a lot of them, and they've been saying, death to the Ayatollah, that is such a brave thing, because you can be killed in Iran for that, just as those poor women were when they protested about wearing the chador. I remember what it was like being in Iran and not being able to go out without a head covering. I was there in 2009, I think. It was a beautiful country, stunning, and so rich in art and civilization. I mean, like Syria, it was the cradle of civilization. And it is heartbreaking what's happened. One of my best friends is a poet from Iran. It's heartbreaking what's happened to that country. Trouble is, of course, Trump is unlikely to go in and unseat the Ayatollah. Of course, there's a part of me that wish he would, but I think it's incredibly unlikely. I don't think we have got the ability really to cover all of these crises in depth. And even if we do, in a way, what is there to say about it? Because the power, it is now, and this is what's so alarming about the Venezuela situation, is that it is all now down to brute strength, really. And Gaza has gone quiet. People are still dying in Gaza. They are starving. They are in refugee camps where they are being flooded. They are freezing. They are ill. I had flu after Christmas, and I thought, imagine what it'd be like to be in a flooded tent with no heating and knowing that you've got no escape from that for months and months and months. I don't know. I think the other factor in all of this is sort of compassion fatigue, actually. In the end, people just think, what, I can't deal with all this. Let me get back into my bubble.
Right. Well, we're going to get into Keir Starmer's bubble in a moment. And we've got a question which asks what this means for Keir Starmer. 16 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
When you
Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
17 minutes past 8, just to reintroduce my panel: Conservative MP Alex Burghart, Labour MP Luke Charters, Lara Brown from The Spectator, and Christina Patterson from herself, journalist and broadcaster. I love your Twitter handle, Queen Christina. I think that takes some courage to call yourself that, but we all agree. Right, let's take a call from Sean in Preston. Hello, Sean.
Hello, Ian.
Hi, what would you like to ask?
My question is, has Keir Starmer taken his shiny moral compass to the pawnbrokers?
What do you mean by that?
Is he trading in his much famed moral standards for political expediency?
Right, so he's basically indulging in realpolitik. That's kind of what you're saying, isn't it? Alex Burghart.
I don't think he ever had a moral compass. I don't. I just don't.
Alex.
I don't think. I think that the way that he has broken a series of promises since he came into power shows you what he's actually made of. So I don't think.
Which Conservative politicians never do they?
Yes. Well, you want to judge the man on the actions that he's taken, and this guy has already broken a lot of his promises.
Did Boris Johnson have a moral compass?
Look, we're talking about Keir Starmer, and your caller was about Keir Starmer, and I think that all right, Ian. Let's be frank. Boris never made any attempt to pretend that he wasn't a rogue. And there's an honesty in that. Whereas if you pretend that you are the most straight down the line, squeaky clean, butter wouldn't melt in my mouth, honest as the day is long kind of guy, and you're not, there's a very deep deceit in that.
And where do you put yourself on that moral compass?
I think I am lost in the wilderness of good intentions. So, yeah.
Christina.
I think probably Keir Starmer is lost in the wilderness of good intentions, to be honest. It's quite hard to see
aren't we all?
Aren't we all, basically? It's quite hard to see a moral compass, but look, I think broadly speaking, he thinks he's a decent guy who wants to make a difference. I, broadly speaking, think that the centre-left approach to politics is probably, on the whole, better for more people than, for example, the reform vision, though that seems to have some very left-wing elements, and we don't really know what that means economically yet. But I do think Keir Starmer has been very disappointing. I think that it's very hard to know what he stands for. I think his heart and passion is in human rights and the law, and I think he's just not a natural politician, and I'm afraid I think he is doing rather a bad job of it. But that's not to say I don't, broadly speaking, try to support Labour, because I think the alternatives at the moment, some of them are looking very, very grim. So, yeah, I mean, I think exactly what you say, Alex, lost in the wilderness of good intentions.
Lara.
The question implies that something's changed about Keir Starmer recently. And if you review his record, there's not much evidence of any strong moral compass at any point. I mean, the man starts off by claiming to be an arch Corbynite to get in, and then suddenly gets in and purges the left. Over the course of his government, he's told us a few times that he sincerely believes in the policy, like the winter fuel payment, like family farms tax, to immediately U-turn on it and throw the minister who introduced it under the bus. This is not a man for which you can track clear principles. I think he's struggling a lot with foreign policy now because he wants to take a position, but he blows in the wind constantly. You show him a single poll and he will change everything he believes. Everybody who has worked with him seems to view that. I think fundamentally he's probably a lawyer, and lawyers don't always make very good politicians, and he wants to be told what the right answer is, and he wants to be the good guy doing the right answer. And in the thorny world of difficult trade-offs, he doesn't have clear principles to help him make those difficult calls. But there's been no real change here. This is a man who's been the same since he entered politics.
Well, that's something for you to respond to, Luke Charters.
Well, I certainly won't take any lectures on morality from hacking Kemi Badenoch. And I think when it comes to moral compass, it's pointing firmly in the direction of our Ukrainian friends tonight, Ian. And I've just seen the Prime Minister at the press conference in Paris with our allies, and he's been steadfast in pulling together that historic coalition. But when it comes to moral compass and some nonsense we've heard from Alex about that, try telling that the Prime Minister doesn't have a moral compass to the 500,000 kids that were lifting out of poverty. 500,000 kids. Here we're going to go. We're going to waste some defence of poverty. Try telling that to one of the kids in York that goes to school with a food and an empty belly. Go on then, Alex, defend that one.
Why did he take the whip away from your colleagues who voted for that self-same policy a few weeks before? What an absolute joke, Luke. I speak to Labour MPs who are absolutely furious with the way that your Prime Minister has treated them. They're absolutely furious.
Rachel Maskell, your
the way
colleague
his
in York,
character has manifested itself in power. They are deeply disappointed in him, Luke.
Well,
it's very good of you to come on and defend the indefensible, and you're doing a good job of it. But you and I both know that this man has let your party down criminally, and he is being dishonest and inconsistent, and that means that people in your party and people in the country cannot trust him anymore. And that's why he is now the most unpopular Prime Minister of my lifetime.
Because of how you lot tore apart the NHS, okay? And when it comes to the Labour whip issue that you referenced, it was a King's speech. We moved on from that. 500,000 kids, and you shake your head.
Yeah,
I'm shaking my head too. I'm shaking my head too, because it beggars belief. It really does. I'm sorry, and I'm someone who's broadly centre left, but it beggars belief to hear you defending Starmer on the children in poverty front, on child poverty, because he was. As it happens, I don't even know which side of the fence I sit on this one, because it is a complicated issue, because if you reward people for having more children and punish middle-class families who can't afford to have more children, that's unfair. But then children who are born without asking to be born into abject poverty for whatever reasons, but sometimes because their parents don't even bother to take the minimal effort that could be made to feed them, give them breakfast before school and all the rest of it. You can't say that when Starmer was determined not to reverse that, and then reverse that crumbled because his MPs rebelled. You can't say that that is a passion issue. You just can't.
I just say, to be fair though, it's the majority of families are actually working.
I know they are. I know they are. But that's not, and that was the case before, and it's the case now. That's not the issue.
Let's bring this back to principle, because, Luke, surely if you are a person of principle and child poverty is what motivates you, which I think we would all agree that's what probably motivates Gordon Brown more than anything, you would have reversed that two-child benefit cap as one of the first things you did when you got in power, and you wouldn't have done the winter fuel allowance thing. I mean, this is political expedience, and I get why. I mean, politicians have to be expedient sometimes. I completely get that. But he can't now suddenly turn around and say that it's a matter of principle for him.
Well, look, are there things we'd like to see done quicker? Absolutely. For example, on free breakfast clubs, I'd like in an ideal world they'd be rolled out quicker, wouldn't they? On two-child benefit cap, it would be great to have fixed all the problems in Britain on day one, but it just doesn't work like that. We have to stabilise a lot of the foundations first, and this
we haven't stabilised.
We haven't, haven't we?
The economy is now stagnant. Unemployment's risen in every month that you've been in.
That's the one you don't talk about.
The last quarter, you had absolutely zero growth, mate. Zero growth, right? You've had unemployment rising in every single month that you've been in power, and you are borrowing 120 billion quid every month. You haven't stabilised anything. The Prime Minister can trot out all of these sound bites as much as he likes, but they are fundamentally dishonest. And let's get back to Ian's point and the question of the person who's called in, that he is being dishonest, and say this moral compass doesn't exist.
Hang on, Alex. Let's bring in another question from Ollie in Glasgow, who says the Tories are now back above Labour in a new poll, with two of this country's biggest football clubs having decided yesterday that they need a new man at the helm. Chelsea and Manchester United, possibly should be West Ham. Is it time for Labour to appoint a new manager too? Now, this poll from YouGov has put the Conservatives 2% above Labour, the first time that particular pollster has had the Tories above the government since the election. And for those who don't follow football... Oh, no, I've already done that bit. Lara, let's start with you. If you look at Starmer's approval ratings or disapproval ratings, he's the most unpopular Prime Minister ever at this stage in a Parliament. And then when you see them going below the Tories, inevitably there's going to be a lot of speculation that, well, maybe they would do better with maybe somebody called Burnham or Streeting or Rayner.
It is actually quite incredible how hated Starmer has become in such a short period of time. The Tories came off the last election thinking it would take years to rebuild, and Starmer has been so useless and so unpopular that they're now suddenly above Labour again. That is really incredible. Starmer's position is completely untenable. He was untenable from the moment that he suspended MPs for voting for a policy he later put through when they had less money to do it than the first time. Most of the MPs I speak to from Labour strongly dislike him. They want someone new. They feel that he is hanging on. They
dislike him as a person or just as a leader?
I think as a person. I think they feel very, very betrayed. The number of MPs who have been forced to go in a media round and defend some policy that they didn't agree with in the first place, only to find it was reversed an hour later, is quite high. They feel that Number 10 has briefed against them, which it has. They feel that Morgan McSweeney is running the show. And I think they're very, very sick of Starmer's lack of principle. There's nothing to admire in him as a person, and they want someone new. So to the public.
Luke, you're obviously going to disagree with that, but there was an example of Mike Tapp yesterday being sent out to do a media round where he basically had to prevaricate over Green and wouldn't answer a question on it with anything interesting to say. And yet 2 hours later, Keir Starmer was very robust about Greenland. And you think, well, why wasn't Mike Tapp given the same leeway to be as robust as he was, and just has become a figure of ridicule for the answer that he gave to Sophie Ridge?
Oh, well, Mike Tapp is doing a strong job when it comes to legal migration, and he's actually come back. He's clarified what he meant on Greenland. He's put a tweet out, so have a look at that. In this world of fast-moving global events, things do change really quickly. We are the government. It's easy being a commentator from the sidelines. Sure. And look, we're in this really challenging geopolitical moment. We've talked about this whole challenge to the global world order. We've got to maintain a lot of these alliances. We don't want to put in jeopardy the things that
going back to Ollie's question,
considered matters.
Because what's your majority?
9,500.
So that's pretty good. You're not the most marginal of seats, but you must be concerned about your future if things go on like this.
Well, in York, we're not seeing that. In my seat in particular, we're not seeing that sort of uptick from reform. We've still seen a lot of the Conservative vote collapse. So I keep chipping on, because when it comes to me meeting my constituents, genuinely, do you want to know the honest truth of it? They don't come and talk to me about leadership plots that we talk so often about in TV studios like this. They do genuinely, as a constituency MP, they come to me and they talk to me about the bread and butter stuff, the cost of living, if they're a business, energy bills, if they're waiting for an NHS appointment. That is the bread and butter stuff that people come to me in my MP surgeries, not a lot of this, frankly, waffle that we spend a lot of time on in studios like this talking about who's who and what's what.
We're very grateful to you for waffling. Alex.
Anytime.
So what's the question, Ian? Sorry.
Well, about Keir Starmer's popularity, the fact that Labour are now behind the Conservatives. Is that going to lead to some sort of coup?
You've been around longer than I have. In my political lifetime, I've watched Labour try to remove Tony Blair, not succeed. Try to move Gordon Brown, not succeed. Try to move Jeremy Corbyn twice and not succeed. So I think I'm not entirely au fait with the precise mechanics of how Labour do their leaderships, but just on the record, I think what may happen is that people move against him but are unsuccessful, and that will, we lived through our own traumas in this area, but those things are destabilising to how the public sees a party. So I think he, as we were saying a moment ago, his position seems to be becoming more and more untenable. But what happens within the Labour Party, I couldn't.
Christina.
Yeah, this is very difficult, and I do agree with you, Luke, that it's running a country is an almost impossible job. I mean, hardly anyone does it, and everyone says, great job, well done, let's vote for you again. I mean, I think we're just not in that world anymore. I have a huge amount of sympathy for what this government is trying to do. I actually joined Labour in order to get Keir Starmer elected as leader, which, thank goodness, I say thank goodness, it's clearly a disaster.
I was going to say, you've hidden it well in the last
it did
20
manage
minutes.
to get. It did. I don't think Labour would have been elected if Starmer hadn't been leader. Alas, it has gone rather wrong. It probably would have gone wrong for almost any party that had been elected. And I suspect if Farage, as current polls would indicate, does become our next Prime Minister, which I really, really hope he doesn't. But if he does, I suspect it will go wrong for him very quickly too. That's the nature of the job.
Then we really are in trouble, aren't we? If it goes wrong for the Conservatives, then Labour, and then Reform, where do we go then?
Well, then people might realise that, you know what, it's all about, not about some magic leader rescuing us. It's about managing an incredibly complicated situation, and maybe we'll have to look at more, Scandinavian-type coalitions and more compromise and so on. We'll have to see what happens at that point. But in terms of getting a new leader in, I agree with you, Alex, that the mechanisms are messy, and it could easily be loads of bungling and media stuff, and then it lead to nothing. I personally think that we would be. I think Starmer is very good on the world stage. I think dealing with Trump is a nightmare. I think he's done a pretty good job of it, and he was clearly in his happy place today with Macron et al. Talking about the stuff that he really cares
voters
about.
Don't like that though. If they think their prime minister is better overseas,
voters don't like it. He does. Is what I'm saying.
Okay.
And it does matter. It does matter. I would go for a strong media operator like Wes Streeting, because I think he's one of the few that can argue effectively. And I think what is needed is a very good storyteller, but whether that will happen is anybody's guess.
Do you think that Wes has the support within the Labour Party? It's
I genuinely don't know, because I'm not in touch with they probably think he's far too right wing, but he would get my vote.
Well, Michael says, what a great panel tonight. I think it is a great panel. We've had interesting discussion. We've had fiery discussion. Let's have some more in the next half an hour. It's 8:34 news headlines on LBC with Matt Hewitt.
The UK and France have agreed to deploy forces to Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire deal with Russia. Sir Keir Starmer's signed a declaration of intent along with the French and Ukrainian presidents, but warned the hardest yards to peace still lie ahead. Greenland's Prime Minister has told Donald Trump he can't have control of the island just because he wants to. The US President claims he needs to annex the Danish-controlled territory right now. South Yorkshire Police has referred itself to a watchdog after wrongly telling a 17-year-old's family that he'd died in a car crash last month. Officers mistakenly identified Trevor Wynne with another teenager who'd been placed under sedation in hospital. LBC weather, rain and sleet moving across the south this evening, eventually clearing overnight. More snow in northern Scotland later. Frosty and icy, lows of -3 to 0 degrees.
This is LBC.
At Pension.
Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
Only by you.
8:36 on LBC. Alex Burghart is here, Conservative MP for Brentwood and Ongar. He's in Kemi Badenoch's shadow cabinet. Luke Charters is Labour MP for York Outer, will undoubtedly be in Wes Streeting's first cabinet, or Angela Rayner's, who knows? He's keeping a poker face, isn't he? Lara Brown is commissioning editor of The Spectator. Any political ambitions, Lara, in the future?
I don't know. We'll see.
That's a yes. And Christina
yes.
Patterson, journalist and broadcaster, who would grace Ermine, I think.
Thank you.
Right, let's go to a text question from Kieran in Earl's Court. This morning, Claire's Accessories and the original factory shop collapsed into administration, citing, amongst other things, adverse government fiscal policies and low consumer confidence. This follows a wave of public unbarring of Labour MPs following changes to business rates. Does the government need to reconsider its approach to save our high street pubs and retailers? Well, a bit of background to this. The retailers' trouble has put 2,500 jobs at risk. Meanwhile, the TV chef and pub owner Tom Kerridge has told LBC the business ministers have admitted to him that they're concerned about the effects which April's increase to business rates will have on his pubs. Christina, let's start with you.
Oh, Claire's Accessories. It's an institution.
I'm not familiar with this.
It's it's probably because you're not a 12-year-old girl.
Well spotted.
I mean, it's very sad whenever a business collapses. It's assuming it's not a drug cartel going to Venezuela. It's very sad, and I really feel for retailers and for pubs and all of those who are struggling to keep their businesses going. I think this is yet another law of unintended consequences. That you try to find, get money from here to rob Peter to pay Paul, and then what happens is that Peter gets very upset and Peter might go bankrupt, and this is what's happened here. I don't know. I mean, clearly there is a price that's being paid, and it's a heavy price, and a lot of pubs in particular are really struggling. What's very hard to say is what the government should do, where it is meant to find the money to cover all the things that people want spending for. And I think, unfortunately, Rachel Reeves has not done a brilliant job so far, not least in selling her budget, which she seemed to chop and change on every 2 minutes. But at least the bond markets didn't go mad. That was something that certainly didn't happen under Liz Truss. And you've got to keep so many people happy. And in Labour, of course, some of the people you've got to keep happy are backbenchers, and they are far to the left, many of them, of most members of the public, just as members of the Labour Party are far to the left of many Labour MPs. So it's a very, very difficult juggling act. But, yes, my heart goes out to every struggling business.
Well, let's go to a Labour backbencher. I'm not going to judge your degree of leftiness because I don't know what it is, Luke. But on the issue of these business failures and the fact that unemployment is rising, what is within the government's power to actually do here? Because a lot of businesses complain about business rates, particularly retailers and the hospitality sector. That is something that the government could attack, couldn't it?
Well, I get it really instinctively, Ian. As we talked about, I've come from the private sector. I've paid business rates before. I've employed people, and I think
you should be in the cabinet. Because none of them have.
Kind. I think.
The only one.
Well, I think to be honest, when it comes to rates, I don't want to bore people on tax, but it's based on the rental valuations. That was something in the pandemic. The valuations were obviously going to increase. There was a ticking time bomb. I don't want to make a big political point about that. We inherited a problem. We came in the budget, did something quite sensible. The transitional rates relief, putting certain caps, again won't bore, but if you're a small medium-sized company like a pub, it will be capped at 15%. But is there a question, should we be going further? I think we should be going further to reform business rates. One of the great shifts that we've started to make is around some of those online giants, getting those big distribution centres, getting them paying more rates, so you can almost subsidise some of those smaller units on the high street. That's a great move. But can we go further and faster? Should we be looking at more support for pubs? I think the answer has always got to be yes. Let's be looking at what we can do to support our pubs.
You've been in the private sector. I mean, when you look at some of the things that the government has done over the last 18 months, which I would say were anti-growth and have caused job losses, I mean, have you ever sort of slightly torn your hair out and gone and talked to some of the ministers and say, look, do you realise what the impact of these policies is on a particular sector?
I think overall, when it comes to growth, we've got to do things like we've got to do planning, infrastructure, all of it, deregulation, cut red tape from businesses. If you run a business, you know, please call in, because the amount of red tape that you've got to deal with, particularly since the botched Brexit, by the way, we've got to cut a lot of that back. But I think what we've really got to do when it comes to the hospitality sector...
You're currently increasing the amount of red tape with the Employment Rights Bill.
Well, what we said is, in aggregate, red tape for businesses down 25%. Let's have better cooperation with the EU, SPS, the food coming in and out of the EU, the trading relationship. There's so much red tape there. On an Employment Rights Bill, let me take that head on. I think we've got to do that in a careful manner. Look at the roadmap. Go and have a look. It's a document. It sets out how all of that should slowly come in over in time. And there was this recent summit, as the Act was going through what's called ping-pong in the House of Commons, to reach that compromise between business. I think it was a compromise reach. And don't forget, when it comes to employment, and I know this, I've been employed people, I was talking to the CBI about this, we've got to get the rates of sick pay down and things like that. People stuck on NHS waiting lists. It's really difficult for employers. So a lot of the employment rights is about staff absences and things like that. What a really good way to support businesses with their employees is to have a healthier and happier workforce through better NHS. So it's all a virtuous circle.
Alex?
So I think the cumulative effect of Labour's measures against business have been really, really damaging. And we've seen that most starkly in rising unemployment, which has gone up every month since Labour came to power. And also particularly within that, very quickly rising youth unemployment. And a colleague of mine gave me a very good example of why this was the other day. She said that she'd been been to a hairdresser's in her constituency and asked, that small business, what Rachel Reeves's changes meant for her shop. She said, well, remember, I always used to have a young person here who used to help with washing the hair. The cost of hiring that 18-year-old, if you add everything on, is now between about £27,000 and £28,000 a year. And
so that's minimum wage is 26,000.
It's everything. And with the Employment Rights Bill coming through, it's just not worth my while. So I will wash the hair myself. And you hear stories like this across the country of people not getting that first entry-level job, not being able to get into the workplace, not being able to build their career. And it's unnecessary and it's heartbreaking. And I'm afraid that, I see it's one of those areas where I just hope that the government will U-turn. I just hope that they will acknowledge the damage that their mistakes have made, and they do the right thing, because otherwise, things are going to get worse for a lot of people in this country. And it's just, business confidence is now lower than it was during COVID. That is how seriously the country has taken against Rachel Reeves's measures.
Laura?
I think we shouldn't focus too much on Claire's. They've been in trouble for a while. But let's think about what changed if you want to employ someone under this government. You talked about unintended consequences, but if you couldn't see any of this coming, you should not be allowed anywhere near the government in any shape or form, let alone being the Treasurer. It's simple stuff. We've increased national insurance contributions for employers, so it costs more money for every single person that you want to employ. Every one of their pay rises costs more money. Energy bills are consistently going up. Business rates have now gone up. The minimum wage is going up, and the Employment Rights Bill is bringing in more expensive red tape, which will cost money to implement. It's forecast to cost millions for businesses. Yes, it will come in slowly, but will come in, and it will increase the number of tribunals as well, which are very difficult for businesses to manage. So it's no surprise that people are finding that unemployment is going up very significantly. That doesn't seem very difficult to see coming. I think this all comes back to what we were saying earlier about Keir Starmer's principles. A principled person looked at the last budget and said, look, I've got to make a decision. I can put income tax up, which I promised I wouldn't do and nobody wants, but would raise the money in a clean way without unintended consequences. Or I can make some difficult cuts. I can tell my MPs that we have to cut the welfare bill, for example. And he decided to do neither. He wanted to do secret tax rises that no one would notice. So he could claim he was keeping his promise while in reality pinching money from here, there and everywhere. And as a consequence, things like Claire's going bust, things like local pubs going bust because we've increased alcohol duties, are going to happen constantly. People will become unemployed and they will face far, far more negative consequence than if they just increased income tax. And that, for me, is what makes Starmer so unbearable, because he's not right-wing, he's not left-wing, he's just incompetent and unprincipled.
Luke, final word to you.
Lots of good things for businesses, youth guarantee scheme, covering some of the cost of apprenticeships, things like the BICS, the Industrial Competitiveness Scheme. If you go to a business, they'll say energy costs are massive, 7,000 businesses will benefit. So there are some things, having run businesses, that I know will really help. But I've got to acknowledge we have made tough asks of businesses, like the national insurance rise in the previous budget that helped fund the NHS. I think it's a net benefit to the workforce in general, so it's all a virtuous circle.
Well, the campaign for Luke Charters for Business Minister starts here. It's 8:47.
This is LBC. Ask Question with Iain Dale. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app.
8:49. I keep thinking I have to sit up straight because last night I was told that I was slouching.
I've been slouching.
Right, we have Alex Burghart, Luke Charters, Lara Brown and Christina Patterson with us. A WhatsApp question from Andrew in Woking. Why is Europe not responding to Trump with a deal? You can have Greenland in return for Ukraine. Help us depose Putin and we will throw in a Nobel Prize. Not quite sure it's as simple as that. The Coalition of the Willing has agreed that British and French forces will be deployed to Ukraine in the event that a peace deal with Russia is secured. Alex Burghart.
Look, I don't think that it's Europe's business to sort of trade Greenland for Ukraine, because it's up to the Greenlanders. We've sort of been around this already on this show. But I do think that the Donald is interested in the art of the deal, and that's why it's absolutely incumbent on NATO as a whole to sit down and talk about what America feels it needs for its defence and to be able to provide security in the Western Hemisphere. But we have to have that conversation. Top people in NATO have to have that conversation as soon as possible so that we can make sure that there is there's not some terrible slip in the near future.
Christina?
I think that Trump is impossible to negotiate with. I mean, but anyway, obviously, Greenland is not anybody's to give away. And as you say, Alex, we've already covered that one. And it's not up to us to carve the world up and say, you have this, we'll have this. That's the way that Trump sees the world, but that's not the way that that Europe sees the world, or is not meant to see the world. I think that we are still adjusting to this transactional new world where everything is about deals and where there isn't even a pretense of fighting for democracy or liberalism. Well, you would never fight for liberalism because J.D. Vance, even more than Trump, has claimed to be anti-liberalism. He seems to think that Europe is some kind of bastion of darkness that is being wrecked by immigration and that has no free speech, even though America is actually banning people who confiscating visas from people who criticise Trump. It's very hard to deal with such a man, and I think Europe is doing what it can. And the key thing it can do is massively increase its security spending, and that's the thing it is trying to do. But continuing on from the conversations we've already had about the difficulty of raising taxes, security spending comes from taxes, and taxes, you can't raise taxes without somebody squealing.
But is deploying British troops to Ukraine sensible?
I think it depends what they're doing. I think the details haven't really emerged of what was discussed today, because I think if they are essentially training Ukrainian forces and helping them build their own defence, I think that's acceptable. If it means British blood being shed on Ukrainian soil, that's another matter.
Laura.
On Ukraine, I think it's worth noting that the Ukrainians are fighting a war on behalf of all of Europe. They're keeping Russia occupied. I think if we do send soldiers there, that would be worth doing. But I mean, on this question, I'm sorry, it's a slightly ridiculous proposal for a lot of reasons. We don't have Greenland to give away. You can't just hand things over to other people. That seems quite obvious. But also, Trump isn't in charge of the Ukraine war. I don't think he's deliberately preventing peace in Ukraine because he hasn't got Greenland. That's definitely not what's happening. So, I mean, Trump is worth negotiating with. Trump knows negotiation. That's how you deal with him. But this negotiation in particular isn't one that would work.
Luke?
Well, I agree with Lara. And I think I would just add, just looking at that press conference at the Elysee Palace and the Coalition of the Willing, can I just say, if you don't mind, my thoughts are actually with the forces families across the country, because I've met a lot of them in my constituency. I've got the Army Medical Service in my constituency. It's quite an anxious time for forces families thinking about what that future deployment could look like. And although I say that, I know that those families are ready to serve as well. So I think all of our thoughts are with them. And I think it is the right thing historically for this nation to play quite a leadership role with the French as part of that, and the document sets out not only the logistics, the troops on the ground, the monitoring and so on, but I think once that peace is secured, once a ceasefire comes in, I know that our British Armed Forces are ready to serve and deliver peace on our continent.
OK. Another question from Kai. Is the government right to consult on banning over 70s from driving if they fail mandatory eyesight tests? And what broader road safety measures does the panel support? Any of you drive a lot? You must in your constituency, Alex.
Yeah, I'm not over 70 though. My eyesight is getting worse. I some relatives who are in their 70s now, and I haven't been through the proposals in close detail. I think there is, if you can't see properly, you shouldn't be driving. But I think that applies to people of any age. Do I think people in their 70s should be automatically made to retake their driving tests? No, I'm not sure about that, but
I think it's eye tests.
It's eye tests,
which are free anyway.
So if the idea is if you fail your eye test, you've got to retake your driving test. But I think if you can't see properly,
I think if you fail your eye test,
that's it.
Okay, well, if you can't see properly, you probably shouldn't.
I have a bit of skin in this game because I have to have a new driving licence every 3 years because I'm diabetic. So I have to do a mandatory eye test every 3 years, and I think that's entirely right. As you say, if you can't see, you shouldn't be driving.
But so what's the thing about being in your 70s? Because
your eyesight does degenerate over time.
But what if my eyesight's degenerating and I'm in my 40s? I mean, presumably if I can't see properly, I'm not going to be allowed to drive.
That's currently the law. You wouldn't want mandatory testing. So the law currently says that if you can't see, you can't drive.
The law currently waits for me to have an accident and then says
you're required to declare if you lose your eyesight and you can't see. But obviously, the degenerative nature of old age eye loss is what they're trying to deal with.
Okay. This is big, apparently, because more accidents involve older drivers, and therefore it seems like a logical step, since older drivers are likely to have poorer eyesight, to ensure that people don't just self-report, as the phrase goes. So I support it.
Luke?
I think the thing I do support it, and I've got a bit of flack, but a lot of support from my constituency pushing for a lot of 20-mile-an-hour zones near schools and in villages and things like that.
Schools, yes,
in villages that want them in schools. I don't think universal, but I don't think there needs to be this great culture war about some of these road traffic safety measures. We can make a bit of a pragmatic leap. 20-mile-an-hour, eye test at 70, maybe some of the drink-drive limits as well. A lot of countries do have lower, so I think we do need a bit of a debate on that.
How about this for an idea? In fact, I might text Heidi Alexandra out this one, because I'm a great believer that speed awareness courses can be actually quite good, but they're at the wrong end of the process. Why don't you have mandatory speed awareness courses for learner drivers, or just after they've taken the test?
Very interesting idea.
Because
have you done a speed awareness?
I've done about 5.
That would suggest they're not that effective.
Yes, exactly.
No, I think this policy has blown up.
I don't think it has, because you do learn things which they do alter your behaviour.
For about 5 minutes.
Possibly not for long enough. But
have you lost your licence from driving too fast?
Once. And I'm about to lose it again.
Oh no!
They've moved the courses online, and the interesting thing here is the data shows that when you're dragged to a test centre for many hours, you do actually modify your behaviour after. But the information doesn't seem to be the thing that changes you, because online people are far more reckless after taking it. So I think you have to really inconvenience people to make them change things.
What have you noticed? Yours in person or yours online?
Mixture. What I've noticed is there's always one boy racer who's determined to have his say, and the majority on every single course are women.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine who likes fast cars and driving fast, he did one once, and he has permanently changed his driving behaviour.
I'll tell you what's changed my
really
driving
surprised.
behaviour.
I was very sceptical.
It's driving an electric car. Because it seems much more natural to drive an electric car at a slower speed.
But I thought you were going to say, now I drive faster, and that's why I've had 5 speed awareness courses.
Let's move on to our fun question. It's this from Christoph in Turner's Hill. Celine Dion. Oh, we've had her featured on a fun question this week, haven't we? Celine Dion says she's becoming cool by joining TikTok. What did you do to feel like you're down with it? Christina.
As the oldest member of the panel, I have no desire whatsoever to be down with it. I'm not on TikTok, but I did go on a trip to Stockholm with some TikTok stars in September, which was great fun. They were all very young, and 3 of them were wearing the hijab, and they were all super bright. And I learned a lot from them. I had a laugh, and it was great. And I think a lot of TikTok is very witty and good fun, but it's just like a whole new platform, and I can't.
Did you go to the Vasa Museum?
Yes,
fantastic. Did you go to the ABBA Museum?
I did. I know I didn't this time, but I have been before. Absolutely fantastic. I went to ABBA Voyage a couple of weeks ago as well.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, we must.
But that
shows you're not cool.
I'm half Swedish, and we had my Swedish cousins staying with me the night ABBA won the Eurovision Song Contest.
And I can remember that night.
So can I.
Yeah, I remember the Napoleon conductor.
Yes.
Alex.
Look, if ever I had an opportunity to be down with it, that ship sailed a very long time ago. I've never been cool, but I do.
Astonish us all.
Exclusive for this show. Breaking news. But I do, because I have children and who are sort of growing up, and I now live with the world's greatest Taylor Swift fan. So having known the square root of nothing about Taylor Swift until about 18 months ago, I now know a surprising number of lyrics and songs. So that's my access to...
At least it's not Sabrina Carpenter, which shows how cool I am that I know Sabrina Carpenter has some very dodgy lyrics. Lara.
Well, Alex, you just stole my answer. I did not see coming. I mean, I am profoundly uncool. I hadn't actually heard the phrase "down with it" before this question. That's how uncool I am. I'm guessing I'm the youngest member of this panel.
I was banned by my boss the other day from saying "down with." Oh no, I can't say it. Can I? Down with the.
You literally can't say it.
No, I'll be sacked.
Oh, okay.
Luke?
Surprises me.
Well, I'm the youngest parent in Parliament. So a lot of my kids, it's listening to Bluey and Paddington and all of that sort of stuff. So that's really the young kids. But if you're on TikTok, give us a follow, because it's a lot about York City and promotion spots.
Now, some breaking news just coming in. A statement from the White House says that Donald Trump and his team are pursuing a range of different methods for acquiring Greenland before his second term ends in 3 years' time, adding, somewhat alarmingly, that utilising the US military is always an option which he can take. 30-second reactions from each of you to that, Alex?
Let's make sure that it's not the US military.
Christina?
Disaster.
Laura?
He's a strong response, or he will do this.
And Luke?
We stand with Greenland.
And so say all of us. Thank you all very much indeed for coming on the panel tonight. Tomorrow we have foreign correspondent Ian Birrell, migrants' rights campaigner Zoe Gardner, MPs Catherine West from Labour and Robin Swan from the Ulster Unionist Party. In the next hour, I want to turn our attention to Iran, which I think is a flashpoint in the world that is being ignored by the world's, well, not ignored by the world's media, but not given the prominence that it deserves. Because there have been various towns and cities that have apparently come under the control of the protesters. These protests started Sunday a week ago, so 10 days ago. They seem to be getting bigger every day. What should we, and I say we in the West, do, if anything, to support these protests? Because I think probably most people, I'd like to think 99.9% of people listening would like to see that brutal Iranian regime disappear. But what would come next?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, Donald Trump and his team are discussing a range of methods for acquiring Greenland. A new White House statement adds that the US president has repeatedly made clear that getting hold of the territory is a national security priority. It also says that utilising the US military is always an option. European leaders, including Sir Keir Starmer, have issued a warning to Mr Trump, saying the island belongs to its people. Rasmus Jarlov, who's a member of Denmark's parliament and chairs its defence committee, says giving it up would be unthinkable.
The Greenlanders are Danish citizens. They have been together with Denmark for 646 years. These are not actions of allies. These are hostile actions towards Denmark, and we are quite fed up with it, to be honest.
European countries have agreed security guarantees for Ukraine if it agrees a peace deal with Russia. The UK and France have signed a declaration of intent to provide air and sea defences and training for Kyiv's forces. The US is expected to lead monitoring of any ceasefire. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has been meeting allies in Paris.
We already have enough details, and we know which countries will get involved and what each of them will contribute separately. And allow me to thank every leader who is willing to contribute to this peaceful solution.
South Yorkshire Police has referred itself to the police watchdog after wrongly telling the family of a teenager he'd died. 17-year-old Thomas Wynne was actually under sedation in hospital after a car crash in Rotherham. Aberdeenshire Council has declared a major incident as it deals with ongoing heavy snow. The local authority says there is a good chance some rural communities will be cut off and there may be power cuts. Andrew Bowie is the Conservative MP for West Aberdeenshire and Kincardine.
I do think that every resource should be drawn upon in a moment like this. And when we have 4 or 5 Commando, for example, just down the road in Arborough, who are actually, Arctic trained and to deal with cold weather events, why shouldn't we be drawing on their expertise to support communities in this time as well?
And on the day he was appointed Chelsea manager, it's been revealed Liam Rossinier has been convicted of speeding and ordered to pay over £1,000. The 41-year-old failed to turn up to a speed awareness course because fog delayed his flight. In the city, the FTSE 100 closed up 118 points at 10,122. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.15. LBC weather: rain and sleet moving across the south this evening, eventually clearing overnight. More snow in northern Scotland, frosty and icy, lows of -3. Tomorrow, dry for many with sunny spells. Scattered wintry showers continuing in Scotland and western areas. Highs of 2 to 9 Celsius. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 9:06 on LBC. I want to turn our attention to what's going on in Iran. If you were listening to me in the mornings last week, you'll have heard me do 2-hour-long phone-ins on the protests in Iran. One of the points I made then, I think is absolutely true, in fact, possibly more true now than it was then, that these protests are not getting the media coverage throughout the world that they deserve. They do feature in British newspapers, but usually on about page 12 or 13. They're certainly not anywhere near the front. Now, OK, we've had what's happened in Venezuela since Saturday, so that has obviously taken the headlines somewhat. But I think it is really irresponsible for massive media organisations to ignore what is going on in a country that could be on the verge of collapse, or the government of that country could be on the verge of collapse. It's very difficult, I understand, particularly for television news, to cover things when they can't get cameras, they can't get pictures. But there are all sorts of pictures coming out of Iran. And you might say, well, you can't use just things that people take on their mobile phones because we can't verify them. Well, I'm sorry, a lot of it you absolutely can. So I want to see the world's media giving a lot more attention to what's going on in Iran, because whatever happens there, it is consequential for, I would say, world politics in general. Certainly consequential for the people of Iran, who've had to put up with this brutal dictatorship since 1979. And we've seen the reaction of Venezuelan people to the toppling of Nicolás Maduro, where literally virtually everyone was out on the streets celebrating it. Now, I'm not going to pretend that the situation in Iran is necessarily totally comparable to what happened in Venezuela. Donald Trump has said that if the Iranian regime harms or shoots protesters, then he is locked and loaded. My question to you in this hour is, OK, Donald Trump has obviously got other things on his mind at the moment with Venezuela and Greenland. But if on Sunday he said he was locked and loaded, well, what does it mean if he fires? By which I mean he intervenes. He launches missile strikes against Iranian targets. Presumably Israel would do the same alongside America as well. Would that be welcomed by the Iranian diaspora that live in this country? I know there's a lot of Iranian people who've come to this country to flee that despotic regime, completely understandable. So I wonder what you think about what should happen now. Should the West stay well out? Would you welcome an intervention from Donald Trump? 0345 6060 973. And again, I particularly want to hear in this hour from people who have friends and family back in Iran. What are they telling you about what's going on? Because it seems, according to some reports, and we'll be talking to Mahyar Tousi a little bit later. He's the founder of the news YouTube channel TousiTV. He's been covering a lot of this live on his channel. He's Iranian himself. And he's been reporting that various towns throughout Iran have actually fallen to the protesters, and the regime has been toppled in those towns. How extensive that is, I don't know. We'll find out from him in a bit. But let's first talk to Alizadeh, who is an Iranian political analyst, who's the host of the YouTube channel Jedaal English. Ali, very good evening to you. What can you tell us about the current state of affairs? Have these protests got a lot larger over the last few days, and are they having an impact?
Thank you very much for inviting me and giving me this time. The protests are actually the third or possibly the fourth round of protests that we have witnessed since 2018. And the first round was like January 2018, in which I think about 20 to 30 people got killed. Then in November 2019, about more than 200 people at least got killed. Some people believe that what happened in autumn 2022 and is known as Women Life Freedom internationally, had some elements of these economically driven riots, and similar to like what we call bread riots technically as well. And this is the fourth one. The main drive for these riots, these protests, these really angry demonstrations is the price of $1, the cutting of remaining subsidies by the government, and as a whole, you can see the pain created by American sanctions and exacerbated by Donald Trump's coming out of JCPOA in 2018 is getting worse and worse every year, because, as you know, sanctions have accumulative pain. So what was wrong, what was painful back in 2007, 18 or 19, now is like doubly or triply kind of painful. And actually some sections of society have like reached to the end of their patience. And combined with that is like quite neoliberal economic policies that is coming from the current more liberal government, if you can call it, but from Pezeshkian government, and especially from the economic minister of this government, Mr. Alizadeh, who is a graduate of Chicago University. He's graduate and he did his PhD with one of Milton Friedman's direct students. So in a sense, you have two main sources of this problem. One is like Western sanctions, which I believe is illegitimate to Iran, whether you like the current regime or current state or not.
How is it illegitimate?
Because Iran sat down for 2 years with many people, with like John Kerry, with British Foreign Minister, and four other countries, and signed a treaty. And Iran has stayed 100% faithful to its obligations in the nuclear deal. And America came out of it single-handedly and unilaterally. Even European countries at the time in 2018 disagreed with Trump's decision. So in a sense, America has left no option for that country. Even if Iran wants to back off and make compromises, America will punish Iran. So there's no way. America says, you are another country in West Asia, like Libya, like Syria, like Yemen, like Iraq, like Afghanistan. I want to destroy you. I want to demolish you, because I don't want China to have access to safe oil resources. And so...
with respect, you're sounding like an apologist for the Iranian regime.
I'm not apologist. You know what? I'm so sorry, but I don't care about this Iranian state. I haven't been back home for the 18 years. But let's forget about this state. Let's forget about these Islamists. Let's just talk about another state, which was Dr. Muhammad Mossadegh in 1951.
No. Let's not do that. Let's stick to...
And they did the same sanctions on Mossadegh in 1953. So in a sense, or Chavez or like Maduro.
No, let's stick with what's going on at the moment in these protests. How widespread are they, in your view?
They are not very widespread in comparison with 2019, 2018, and 2022. They're not widespread, but they're quite violent. So in a sense, they are smaller, and I'm not saying that to defend it, but I'm saying that actually those people who are on the street are much more radical, because they are much more impoverished. And that's why, in a sense, it's dangerous. It is a danger to Iran's security, and it can develop into civil war. So it's not a good story for anyone, especially for Iranians who have come out of
and what about the fact that 35 protesters have been killed by the Iranian security forces?
Sorry, what was the question?
35 people have been killed by the Iranian security forces. I mean, if Donald Trump is locked and loaded, isn't that the excuse he's going to need to intervene?
I mean, 35 people who I have a lot of sympathy with them, because I think as a socialist, they are from the most deprived part of Iran's society. They are the ones who have suffered most. Many of them are either unemployed or they're working with like $90 to $100 a month. So I'm really sorry for those parts of the Iranian society which are suffering massively. But sanctions they were designed to make Iranians suffer. The book written by Richard...
No, the Iranian regime... Let's get this straight. The Iranian regime has made its people suffer. For goodness sake. I mean, you're just an apologist for them, aren't they?
How did they do that? No, you are apologists for Trump, because...
No, I'm not. I'm not suggesting he should intervene, but I had thought that you might actually have some compassion for the protesters rather than defending the regime the whole time.
No, hang on a minute. I can
read through what you've been saying very easily, sir.
I have sympathy for protesters, much more than you have sympathy for 100,000 victims of Israeli and American
here we go.
genocide in Israel.
I was wondering how long it would take for Israel to come into the conversation.
Where was your sympathy for 100,000 people who were killed in genocide and America was locked and loaded?
Okay.
Give ammunition.
Goodbye. Goodbye. I have no interest in hearing any more of this propaganda that you're spouting. Absolutely disgraceful. 16 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.
If you
Dale on LBC.
17 minutes past 9. Well, let's get what I think will be an alternative perspective on what's going on in Iran from Mahyar Tousi, founder of the news YouTube channel TousiTV, that's TOUSITV, whose mother came to the UK from Iran as a political refugee. Mahyar, very good evening. I could kind of see you shaking your head through a lot of what was going on over the last few minutes. Now, from your perspective, how widespread are these protests? I mean, our previous guest was saying, well, they're not as big as they were in previous years. Is that true?
Well, thank you for having me. And certain things in politics, as you know, are subjective. Certain things are objective. So I'm open about my leanings. And so when I'm going to give my opinion, I'll give my opinion. Certain things are obvious. The previous guest you just had on, who, again, like many other people, just self-identify as an expert or analyst these days, I thought initially was just going to say the BBC line that these are economic protests, but he went further. He was defending Chavez. He was blaming everything on the West, and then said, as you mentioned, they're not widespread, but they're more violent. Now, this is not my opinion. Based on everything that we see, even the regime themselves, you can see the evidence that actually a lot less violent than 2022, 2019, which back in 2019, that was in fact a cost of living crisis uprising. 2022 was more political. And now this is just an implosion against the regime. It is definitely more widespread. It's in every city and every town. It's even in islands, the island of Gesh. It's in a remote place that people are out everywhere, and the regime have struggled to do a crackdown. That's just quite clear for everybody to see. That's the reality. But the political left, like this guy who you just had, they were the same people in Iran who were stupid enough in 1979 to back the Islamists. But then they got destroyed too the moment obviously the paramilitary coup happened in 79. But now they're doing the same thing again because they hate the West so much that they end up still backing the same people who destroyed them the last time.
So I was watching you earlier on today, and you had some very interesting video footage from Iran, from various different places. I mean, it does seem to be sort of some quite mass protests. You were also saying that there are some towns in Iran that have fallen under the control of the protesters, which was the first time I'd heard that. Just explain that a little bit more.
Yeah. So obviously that doesn't mean that the regime have fallen.
No.
So we've had 10 days, 10 battles, and this is my opinion, subjectively, 10 victories, because at the end of each night, the regime have not been able to end it or take control. So Tehran today, the capital, did fall into and still to this moment, in the control of the people. The regime have not been able to do anything there. But there is a small city, Abdanan in Elam, that, again, this is just an opinion, it's observation. That one does definitely seem that it's completely fallen, because the regime have withdrawn their forces, and the police, the local police station, we have evidence, the video, they have joined the protesters. They put their weapons down and they joined the protesters. So that's the situation in that place. But technically, I can say, in my opinion, that almost every city and town, apart from one place in Karaj, are not under the control of the Islamic Republic right now. But people can easily judge this by looking at what happened in 2022, 2019, 2009, previously, how the regime usually takes control, how they do the crackdown, how organized they are, compared to this time round. And it's primarily because people are doing the uprising everywhere. Usually it's in a couple of major cities like Mashhad and Tehran or Esfahan, but this is everywhere.
And it's been reported that 35 protesters have been killed. Does that match with what you're hearing?
Yeah, official numbers. Since day one, we had the same tactic used by the Islamic Republic, which is they tried their best to, for example, claim a couple of the people who died as their own, but then their fathers at the funerals, they came and clarified, no, my son was not part of the regime. They wanted the narrative that these are actually our people being killed by violent people. But if the number is officially 35, I don't have evidence, but I can guess that it's probably much higher, but it's still not as high as it should be. While it's a very bad thing to talk about, more people obviously potentially getting killed. At this stage of previous uprisings, the death toll should be in hundreds, if not thousands, when you look at what happened in 2009 or even 2019. So I don't know if there wasn't some sort of order of stand down or try your best not to kill because they're scared of President Trump, what he's going to do, or whether the security don't really want to anymore. We don't know exactly what's going on in their brain, but they're not really, they could have killed much more. And it could easily get much worse, by the way. But yeah, so far, that's the situation.
I remember in one of these previous outbreaks of protests, I think it was in the early 2000s, where I think a lot of people in Iran were expecting America to come to their aid when the protest started, and America didn't. And I think there was a tremendous feeling of letdown. Now, that was a long time ago. What do you think, and people in Iran will presumably know what's been happening in Venezuela, do you think that there will be a widespread feeling that, well, they want Donald Trump to fire his gun? I mean, he said he's locked and loaded. Do you think that would be welcomed?
So from what we are seeing, there is a lot of evidence of people, again, just like any other country, there are people who are left-wing, who are right-wing, there are people who are pro-Trump, anti-Trump in Iran. But from a lot of evidence that we are seeing, we haven't seen any evidence of anybody on the street saying, well, we hate Trump, Trump shouldn't do this. But we are receiving a lot of videos and pictures, people thanking President Trump, at least, for showing support. There was also a couple of publicity stunts, people changing the street names with Trump. The reality is that the Iranian people were unlucky the last few times because coincidentally, every single time an uprising happened, a US Democrat was president. And I think there's a bit of party politics involved in this, at least subconsciously, the Republican side, where once in the late 2000s, we had Bill Clinton in charge. The time you mentioned was Obama in 2009. And not only he didn't support the Iranian people, he actually gave billions of dollars to the Islamic Republic to get them to basically sign the nuclear deal. And of course, Joe Biden was in charge last time as well. So I think there's a bit of a Trumpian mentality that, because he knows and his team know that the Iranian people don't like the Democrats. There's a lot of anti-US Democrat chants in Iran, especially against Jimmy Carter, because he was involved. He was around when 79 happened. I think people in Iran who've been quite clear, they don't necessarily want a savior. They don't want their boots on the ground, any country to come and invade and force them to be free. People know what they want now, but at this point, a lot of them at least have been quite clear, whether it's Israel, whether it's the United States, if they come and tactically help, whether it's to hit the ballistic missile sites or IRGC bases, it would help them finish the job.
And just very quickly, as I said, you're of Iranian descent yourself. Have you ever been there?
Yeah, so I used to go when I was a kid. And the last time was 2009, I think. And that's when I was getting involved with party politics at the time. I was a Tory party member. And then I discovered that the Interior Ministry in Iran basically banned me. They sent a letter saying apparently I'm an MI6 Tory agent, because if you're Tory, you're definitely MI6. So I'm banned from going back, but I didn't really want to go back while the Islamic occupation was involved anyway.
I've always thought you were a spy, Mahyar.
I do get accused a lot on my channel. Which,
I'm sure you do.
Spies are not supposed to be identified that easily, but if I'm getting I'm a terrible spy.
Thank you very much for coming on the programme. That's Mahyar Tousi there. If you want to watch his YouTube channel, it's at TousiTV. That's TOUSITV. It's 9:26. Oh, we're not going to a break. We're going to have calls. Fine. Let's go to Ishmael in Twickenham. Hello, Ishmael.
Ian.
Hi. What would you like to say?
Just I like to say I've been calling back a few times since this protest going on. I just would like to say, please, this is the time, people out, and we need your support. The West countries, please, not like last time and the time before. We still trust you. This is the time to be the Iranian people voice.
What do you mean by support, though?
What, support people?
No. What support would you like the countries like Britain to give?
Don't sit on the table with this dictator regime again. Don't bring them to the table again. Send the ambassador home. Bring your ambassador from Tehran. This is all going to affect. And at the moment, we got people screaming. They got alternative, which is Mr. Pahlavi. 100% he's the right man to do the job. Please, do not give this regime any more. 47 years is enough. Enough is enough. I got a girl. Every morning she say that when Pahlavi go back, she doesn't know anything about Pahlavi, but she see me watching these things, and she keep asking me. She's only 10 years old. That I want Pahlavi go back.
Well, I mean, I understand that, but why is he the only game in town? Wouldn't you want a more sort of democratic regime?
Yeah, we do. This is the time we pass. You need a leader to pass these things. And when he goes there, as he mentioned it for 40 years, you say, we pass this and we believe him. That's put the referendum there. If they want me, I stay. If you want a kingdom, whatever people choose, he will say, I'll follow. There's nothing wrong with that.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for your call. Let's move on to Steve, who's in Manchester. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Ian. Nice to talk to you.
Hi.
My question is to you and to any of your foreign affairs experts. What does the UK have in terms of influence over the Middle East? I sometimes fear that the West, and when I say the West, I mean the US, the UK, France, seems to get involved in the Middle East problems, and nobody else seems to get involved militarily. Now, obviously, the UK, we don't have the economy, we don't have the military, and I think we really don't have the authority anymore. So
we're a terrible country, aren't we, Steve? I mean, why don't we just give up on everything?
Well, I think we have to try to be influential, but I think the Iran problem has to be surely a Middle Eastern solution. Middle Eastern countries, maybe Asian countries, have to help solve the problem. So another example is France and the UK have just bombed targets in Syria. Okay. Now, as I'm aware, no one else was involved in this. So, again, the question is, why is the Middle East not being involved? Because all this does have consequences for what our actions, surely.
Well, I think that there are many times when people have expressed frustration that Middle Eastern countries haven't stepped up to the plate and done possibly what they should have done and left it to the likes of Britain, France, America, whoever, to do things. I don't necessarily disagree with that. But they have to be willing to do it. And of course, you say it's very easy to say Middle Eastern countries. Well, we know that Saudi Arabia, for example, is a sworn enemy of Iran. So they're not going to have any great sort of influence on Iran, I suspect.
But in terms of militarily, are they capable of the?
Well, Saudi Arabia certainly is.
I just feel as though that there's consequences to everything we do, and the world sees the West, and I keep saying the West, I mean the US, the UK, and some European countries as being the police of the world. And I just can't help feel now that, there's consequences to this all the time.
Yes, but there are also consequences sometimes of doing nothing. The easy thing for any major country is to do nothing ever.
But do we not? Then we need to look more at influence in other countries. So China, India, the big countries, Japan. They have to step up to the plate. Or we look at Trump's. He's put tariffs on all these countries. Maybe that would be an option. That if they're not willing to help or get involved, then we go down the tariff route. So maybe that's an option.
Well, we and America have put sanctions on Iran. I don't know how many other countries have done that. I think sanctions have a limited effect generally, but I suppose it's a signal of intent, isn't it? Steve, thank you very much indeed. We'll take more of your calls in a moment on the situation in Iran. If you are of Iranian descent and you have family members, if you have friends in Iran, what are they telling you about the extent of these protests? 0345 6060 973. We'll be talking to Simon Marks in just a moment as well on the latest developments with Trump and Greenland. It's 9:32 news headlines with Matt Hewitt.
The White House says utilising the US military is always an option as Donald Trump and his team discuss a range of methods for acquiring Greenland. European leaders, including Sir Keir Starmer, earlier warned the island belongs to its people. British troops will be deployed in Ukraine to help defend the country from a future attack if there's a ceasefire deal with Russia. The UK and France have signed a declaration of intent to provide air and sea defences and training for Kyiv's forces. Aberdeenshire Council has declared a major incident as it deals with ongoing heavy snow. It says this means it can focus attention on the emergency response and work efficiently to protect life and maintain essential services. LBC weather, rain and sleet moving across the south this evening, eventually clearing overnight. More snow, as we've heard, in northern Scotland. Frosty and icy, lows of -3 to 0 degrees.
LBC. Dale on LBC.
It's 9:34 on LBC. Now we're going to cross live to Washington. Simon Marks, as you know, is LBC's US correspondent. And Simon, you have news.
I do have news, Ian. I should tell you, I've literally just arrived back in Washington, D.C. from London in time for President Trump and the White House to issue a statement on Greenland that tells us that it is very important for the United States national security for Greenland to become part of the United States, that all options are on the table. And those options, the statement explicitly says, include the military option. I mean, this is a stunning upping of the ante by the White House on the very day that the Prime Minister and the other members of the coalition of the willing were thinking that they had secured some kind of meaningful commitments from Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner on Ukraine. The response from Washington, D.C. to growing concerns about the future of Greenland now, this absolutely shameful statement that the White House has put out here this evening, indicating that military option is the military option is one of several options being considered when it comes to the future of Greenland. And, you know, when I left London several hours ago, I heard Ben Wallace on Nick Ferrari at breakfast saying that he thought that, you know, there was a 30% chance of the United States going military against Greenland. That number has definitely increased substantially here this evening.
And who was making this statement? Because I think that is quite important here, isn't it? Because we had Stephen Miller on, I saw him on CNN last night making some fairly bellicose comments. But is he representative of the rest of the White House?
Well, this is an official White House statement. So this is the White House speaking, on behalf of President Trump. This is the official American government position now. And it is clear that they have decided to do this tonight, partly because they've seen what was taking place in Paris earlier today, and also partly to make it absolutely clear to America's NATO partners that President Donald Trump is absolutely serious about this. I think also he really sees the opportunity to push as far as he can now in the immediate aftermath of what has taken place in Venezuela, the capture of Nicolas Maduro. This is a president utterly unconstrained, utterly unrestrained, and absolutely determined that he is going to mold the world to his vision, and that the United States is going to absolutely be dominant in the Western Hemisphere, and certainly dominant in terms of its relationship with Europe.
Simon, thank you very much indeed. That's Simon Marks, LBC's US correspondent. Ray says, vis-a-vis Iran, my hopes, thoughts and prayers are with the brave people of Iran fighting the regime. I would absolutely love to see direct military action against the regime. Let's go to Ellie, who is in Kensington. Ellie, hi.
Hi, thank you for giving me a voice today.
It's a pleasure. What would you like to say?
I'm Iranian, but I grew up here in Britain, and I want people listening to know why this matters so deeply to me. Even though I grew up in a free country, my family, my roots and my identity are tied to Iran. Right now, as we're speaking, millions of ordinary Iranians are living under fear, not because of war or foreign invasion, but because of their own government. They want the same basic things everyone here takes for granted: dignity, safety, and a future for their children. When Iranians protest, they're not asking for power or luxury. They're asking not to be beaten for how they dress, not to be imprisoned for speaking, and not to be killed for demanding bread, jobs, and freedom. Many of those killed were young, innocent, and unarmed. This isn't about religion versus the West or geopolitical games. It's about accountability. A state that rules through fear cannot call itself stable. You cannot build a society by silencing it.
Well, I would hope that everyone listening would agree with what you've just said there. What prospects do you think there are of success for these protests?
I think at the moment, what we can see that differs from the Mahsa Amini protest, Gina Amini protest in 2022, is that everyone is chanting Reza Pahlavi's name. He is, a person that has stood by the Iranian people, that is the only individual that we can call an opposition outside of Iran, which truly listens to the voice of the people. And I think that everyone is so united this time, because Iranians are not extremists. They are artists, students, workers, poets, a civilization thousands of years old. And I just wanted to say that I just wanted to say thank you on their behalf, and please don't forget them, and please don't confuse the Iranian people with the regime that represses them. I think right now we're standing in a very, very important moment in history to be able to witness such a thing, Iranians overthrowing this brutal regime all by themselves. And I think it's extremely important for Western governments and Western leaders to stand by them and to show their support. So, as Donald Trump has so bravely shown his support, and I think that matters a lot. And we've seen an uproar in these protests.
Have you ever been to Iran?
I have, yes. Many times, actually. But after the 2019 uprising, which was called the Bloody November uprising, where they killed 1,500 protesters in 3 days, I haven't been since, unfortunately.
And I mean, I think there'll be a lot of people from Iran who live in this country who fled here, but they will now have children as well. And I wonder how many of those children, and you probably know quite a lot of them, how many of them could ever imagine going back to it or going to Iran and living there and helping to maybe rebuild the country in a positive way?
Yes, so I moved to the UK when I was 3 years old, and I cannot wait to move back. I mean, the second Iran becomes free, I'd love to go back and live there and be part of the society that rebuilds Iran. I think the majority of the people that I'm in touch with feel the same. We feel so deeply because that freedom was stolen from us, and we know that sense of freedom. We've had it before. So I think it's really important for people to realise how important this truly is, because so many others, just like me, would love to go back and to rebuild Iran and to be part of, the new free Iran.
Ellie, thank you very much indeed for coming on the programme. Really, really interesting to hear your point of view. Mohammed says, the reason why mainstream media is not covering the Iranian revolution, well, you can't really call it a revolution yet, can you? Because in their eyes, this movement is not left-wing enough. Really? We all know that amongst our liberal left there is a hierarchy of morality, and Iranian lives are not as valuable as Palestinian lives. By the way, Alizadeh, who is our first guest, is a regime apologist. Well, I think I worked that out for myself fairly quickly in that interview, Mohammed. I do think this is interesting, what you say, though, about there is a certain group of people in this country who seem to... Well, do I even want to say this? Well, you've said it. You said they don't regard Iranian lives as valuable as Palestinian lives. I think you're absolutely bang on there. I've got no explanation for it. I don't understand why. But why is there this sort of lack of interest in what's going on in Iran? I don't get it. Here's another one. This is from... doesn't say. Iain, you are so biased. I listen to your shows every week with frustration. Well, if you're so frustrated, I mean, there are other shows that you could listen to. I listen to LBC every day to broaden my understanding of the British media, and LBC is so divisive. It's not being biased. It's having an opinion and being free to express it. I am biased against the Iranian regime. You're absolutely right. I'll be biased against any brutal dictatorship that subjugates its people in the way that they do and is just utterly ruthless with them. Yeah, I'm biased against people like that. I'm biased against presidents like Maduro who run drug rackets to the United States. Yeah, I'm absolutely biased against him. I'm absolutely biased against any despotic regime that seeks to extinguish the flame of freedom. And I would hope that wasn't a controversial thing to say, but it seems as though nowadays it can be. I will always stand up for freedom. I'll always stand up for people's individual liberties. That is why I think a lot of people are supporting what's going on in Iran at the moment. One of the most joyous things that I've seen in recent days has been the absolute joyfulness of Venezuelan people who are finally rid of this communist regime that has driven them into penury over the past 27 years. you can see on people's faces the exhilaration that they feel of being freed. And they don't have to be Trump supporters to feel like that. I've seen many liberal lefty Democrats in America saying, well, I may not like Trump, but he's done the right thing here. And you look at the faces of Venezuelan people and you think, well, that is living proof. It's 9:45.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Henry Riley.
The White House says acquiring Greenland is a national security priority and that the president is discussing a range of options. How should we respond? Plus, should we cut the drink-drive limits to 0?
Henry Riley at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the new LBC app.
It's the last
Leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
9:48, back to your calls on Iran in just a moment. But first, a police force has admitted mixing up the identities of an 18-year-old killed in a car crash with another teenager who survived the collision. Well, let's get more on this from Alex Taylor-Brown, LBC's Yorkshire correspondent. I mean, Alex, it doesn't get much more horrific than this, does it?
Evening, Ian. No, this is deeply traumatic in so many ways. If I take you back to the early hours of Saturday, the 13th of December, a silver Toyota Corolla came off Todwick Road in Rotherham, killing two teenagers. A 17-year-old girl died, as well as another male who was believed to be 17-year-old Trevor Wynne. An 18-year-old man who was believed to be Joshua Johnson was sedated in hospital. Now, on Sunday, 3 weeks after the collision, police say information came to light which has now led to further formal identification processes, including forensics, to be undertaken. That led to the revelation that Trevor was not dead, and it was he who'd been sedated in hospital, meaning that Joshua had in fact been killed in the collision. That means one family spent Christmas thinking their son is dead when he's actually alive, and another thinking their son was lying injured in hospital when he was actually dead. Trevor's family were in the process of funeral arrangements. South Yorkshire Police say the families and Trevor will be offered support from specialist services. Assistant Chief Constable Colin McFarlane said in a statement that this has come as a huge shock to everyone and that he recognises the additional trauma this may cause. He's also offered to meet both sets of parents and adds that the force has referred itself to the police watchdog watchdog, the IOPC. A GoFundMe was set up for Trevor's family to help cover the costs of his funeral. The page has now been updated with this latest shocking news stating that Trevor, apparently known as TJ, is in fact alive, and that any monies donated will go to helping towards his recovery instead. This is also still an active police investigation. 2 men aged 19 and 18 who were arrested in connection with the collision remain on bail. But deeply shocking and traumatic story for the families involved, Ian, who will both be coming to terms with this latest news.
Alex, thank you. That's Alex Taylor-Brown, LBC's Yorkshire correspondent. Right, back to your calls on Iran. It's 10 to 10. Yasmin is in Hampstead. Hello, Yasmin.
Hi, Ian.
Hello, what would you like to say?
I'm a first-generation Iranian immigrant. I lived in Iran with my family until I was about 10, and then I've lived here for the rest of my life. And I have been back, and I still have a lot of family there and family in the wider diaspora. When you asked about what are we hearing from our family and friends, I think one thing that sticks out to me is that while everybody wants the regime gone, there is no supporters of the regime. There is really no consensus on what the transition process looks like or who comes next. And I think that's the most concerning thing. And I think that would be the thing that would that would make me want to not want any sort of Western intervention, because you don't know what could come next.
What prospect is there, do you think, for like full-scale civil war here? I mean, we often describe these things as revolutions or civil wars. I mean, civil wars don't have generally necessarily a happy ending, do they?
Absolutely not. And I think in terms of the prospects, I think the likelihood is really high. If you look at the separatist movements on the Pakistani border, the Baluchistan, or the on the border of Azerbaijan with the Azeris, or the Kurdistan separatist movement, it's very likely that if there is any sort of vacuum in leadership, not that I'd want to call this regime leadership, but just in terms of an actual power base, that these movements would really gain ground quickly, especially because they are being armed by various forces across the Middle East who want to see a fragmented Iran because it benefits them. So I think that's the main concern in terms of the fact that there is no real opposition leader. Two of your previous callers talked about Reza Pahlavi, but the man has no substance. He's not offering anything, and I thought, well, I should look into him and see what he's saying. All I found from him was sort of platitudes about how he wants to be a leader because of who his father was, and the fact that he said he doesn't actually want to live in Iran. He wants to live in America. He just wants to come and go because he's never lived there, and it's very sad. But I think
but how could you possibly lead a country if you aren't living there?
Exactly. I mean, your previous caller, Ellie, talked about how she can't wait to go back there and to help build up a civic society in Iran. But then you have someone who purports to want to lead the country and says, well, I'm not actually going to live there because I don't want to be a victim of the revolution. But, we have our own version of Machado in Venezuela. We have civic fighters like Narges Mohammadi, who won the Nobel Peace Prize in the year before last, and you have people in Iran who lead these opposition movements as well internally, but unfortunately they just get quashed by the regime, and this means that we never hear about them. They don't really get an opportunity to flourish as an opposition base and a proper opposition to the government.
Yasmin, a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much. Let's move on to William in Paisley. William, hi. What would you like to tell us?
Evening, Ian. I just think we should invade Iran because it's in the West's best interest to do so.
Invade it?
Yeah, we should definitely invade it, occupy, do whatever we need to nullify them.
Are you is that meant to be a joke?
No, I genuinely believe it. I think they're the thing holding back the Abraham Accords right now. I think they're a threat to potentially the West, potentially Israel, Britain, Europe, and America. I think it's completely logical to want to invade Iran, oust their leadership, and to occupy. If needs be, you should occupy them, but I don't think that would be necessary.
But the fact is, since the Trump and Israeli strikes on Iran, I mean, and since also the fact that Maduro is gone, who was a key supporter of the Iranian regime, and they would launder money through Maduro. I mean, you haven't really heard a peep out of Iran since then. So they were already very weak. Why on earth would we think about invading? I mean, I think it's a lunatic idea.
Well, to invade them, but only if it's necessary. If your previous caller said if there's a power vacuum and whoever takes up that power vacuum might be worse than the person, they might be better than us now. Well, if that's the case, you occupy them and you put a puppet government in to run them until you get a leader.
Which is exactly what we did in Iraq, and that really worked out well, didn't it?
It didn't work out well because we didn't commit properly.
Well, I don't think you can say that given the number of British, American and other troops that were stationed there for many years.
No, because they didn't flatten the country.
You see, I can't work out whether you're a prank call or not, because you're uttering absolutely lunatic ideas.
Well, in terms of this, Ian, I'm 24. My whole life I've seen international law being ignored. I really think this thing in Venezuela is just a turning point in world history, and I do think things like that will be the norm in the future, just ignoring conventions of law. So in terms of that, it's really changed my opinion. I would have agreed with you until a week ago, but I just think in the modern world that we're living in, it's military violence is the only way to secure international security.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you're reflective of British public opinion, God help us all. Bob's in Harrow. Hello, Bob.
Hi, good evening, Ian, and evening to your listeners. Just to answer your question, why is the British mainstream media not getting involved with Iran? Because of the influence of Islamic Shiite clerics in this country and their communities, and we have to be extremely delicate and nuanced in how this is reported. And I think your first caller, you immediately identified, Ian, the tune, the song beneath the words. And that is the risk, which you've stepped up, you've taken the risk, and you've come up with the goods. And I don't think that the mainstream media are prepared to go to the lengths which you've done this evening and expose.
But why not?
The risk to their reputation. And also the correspondents of the BBC who are in aligned countries who are aligned with Iran. Their correspondents in those places could be at risk if the BBC and the mainstream media did what you've done this evening and called people out.
Well, it's a pretty sad state of affairs if the media can be intimidated by either thinking, oh dear, our reputations will be at risk if we say anything against an Islamic country or regime, or indeed that they are bullied into submission because of the fear of the safety of their journalists.
I think you're right. It's a very, very sad state of affairs. And I must say, you have a phenomenal amount of respect for myself and other people for standing up and saying it is how it is. And the contributors this evening to this topic, the lady who identified the problem in Iran for the Iranian people. And I think the Iranian people want regime change. They want to be free. They want to contribute. And they want to be part of the broader base of humanity where people can be who they are. Nobody's asked to be born, and the Iranians were not asked to be born Iranians. And now they've got a potential choice, as Mahyar Tousi has identified, to be free and to uphold the values of humanity and to be part of the nation who love man and woman. And I think that is what we're at right now. Will these demonstrations crystallise into a revolution, and will there be regime change? We can only pray and hope so, sir. We can only pray and hope.
Bob, thank you very much indeed for your call. Now, just a tip about Thursday's Cross Question. But given it's the first Thursday Cross Question that we will have done, we've got a rather special panel for you. It consists of Tom Swarbrick, Lewis Goodall, Rachel Johnson, and Sheila Fogarty. How about that for a cross-question panel? That's Thursday at 8 o'clock. Make sure you tune in for that. Well, thanks for all of your calls and messages this evening. I'll be back tomorrow from 7. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Richard Spur. But right now, in for Ben Kentish is Henry Riley.
My invite for cross-question must have got lost in the post. Thank you very much, Ian. Good evening at 10 o'clock.
By what right does Denmark assert control over Greenland? What is the basis of their territorial claim? The United States is the power of NATO.
That was one of Donald Trump's aides as the coalition of the willing, including RPM, issues a joint statement saying Greenland belongs to Denmark, with the White House tonight saying they're looking at all options, including the military. Plus,
the drink drive limit being reduced.